I'm not already here for that.
Does anyone have any new introductions at the table?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, so Rob Brown, he retired after 32 years. So we have Dorian Allen, who's our new principal planner one, who'll be taking his position. I think most of you already know Debbie Van Der Steeden, who's been on the committee for a while. So you'll start to see new folks representing city. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Were there any other introductions at the meeting? I always look on these sparse today. Okay, moving on to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Were there any requests for modification to the agenda?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Yes, I do have a request for a change to modify item number 7L that's included in the packet. We would like to request to modify the amendment for UPC 119637 with what was handed out. And we would like to add a new amendment that is temporary number T26347. This is for the Hampton Roads Express Lane projects, the segment 1 project. We're working with HRTPO and due to estimate increases, we've moving forward with splitting the project into 2 phases. So the full build project is already in the tip, but we're now modifying that to break it down into 2 separate phases, a phase 1A and 1B. So that's what we passed out this morning. So I'd like to request to include the what we passed out this morning into the agenda to replace what's under item 7L.
So is the request to remove L and replace it with a new item or to modify it?
To remove L and replace it with the 2 attachments, the 2 tip amendments that we handed out this morning.
You can't replace L with 2 amendments, so one would replace L and then one would be at the end.
Okay, that sounds great.
So the request for modification would be to modify item L to one of the attachments that was passed out at the table and to add an item T to the consent agenda, which would be the second item that was handed out at the table. Were there any other requests for modification? If there's no other requests, then I'll look for a motion.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have an amended agenda. Next item is the public comment period. I don't see any public present to give comment. Is there anyone? Okay. Moving on to item number 5 would be submitted public comment. I don't believe we received any for the TPO. So moving to item number 6, we have comments and updates from our state and federal agencies and liaisons. I guess the easiest way would just be to go around the table. So we can start with the report.
Good morning, no report this morning, thank you.
Taking a look at who is here. Nita, I think, is next.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. Yes, just quick update. We have our 6-year improvement program public hearing for the FY 23-28 plan. The public hearing is scheduled for May 2nd at 4 p.m. It will be in person at the Hampton Roads District Office in Suffolk. There'll be more information coming out about the public hearing, but I just wanted to make sure everybody can get it on their agenda, save the date. Other than that, I don't have any additional updates on funding from what I presented or discussed last TTAC meeting, but I hope to have some more updates at the next TTAC meeting in April. not sure if Eric has any updates on Smart Scale.
Just want to remind you guys, the portal is open for pre-applications. Open March 1st yesterday, and it will close April 1st, 11:59 p.m. So if you aren't working on your Smart Scale applications, please start to do so. If you have any questions, feel free to call our office. If you have any technical questions, please email the Smart Scale portal for help, and you can CC someone from our office as well. That's pretty much where we are. Look forward to working with you all on Smart Scale this round.
Thank you, and I'm looking around the rest of the table. Are any of our transit agencies at the end down there?
Right there.
Thank you.
No update, however.
Okay, so moving on to item 7, that's approval of our consent agenda with the modifications earlier of modifying item L and adding item T. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, did we get a quorum?
Yes.
I'll move the approval.
Do you have a motion? Is there a second? Second for Newport News.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to item number 8, which is a TPO presentation regarding the TA set-aside project selection that we went over in TPS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to provide you with a briefing on the fiscal year 21-22 transportation alternatives for TA set aside, the project selection and application process. I know that most of you are familiar with the TA set aside, but for those of you that aren't, I'm going to provide some high-level background. Just take it a little slow today. So in 2015, the FAST Act created a set-aside for, which is called a SPBG, or Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, to fund transportation alternatives, so otherwise known as CAP projects. Now, in November of 2021, this infrastructure package was replaced by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is our current infrastructure program. And we'll talk about that a little more in the next few slides. So this is a biennial process, and the funding for this year's project selection process is for fiscal years 23 and 24. And the next opportunity that you're going to have to submit applications for TA set aside will be October 1st of 2023 will be the deadline. Take it a little slow. Okay. That's one more time. Okay. So some of the eligible project categories I have listed here, things such as on-road and off-road bicycle and pedestrian facilities, conversion of abandoned railway corridors into trails, construction of turnouts, overlooks, and viewing areas. I'm going to go through all these. Also, environmental mitigation activities, and safe routes to school, and just some of those listed here. And the reason I highlight this is that the overwhelming majority of the projects that are received for TA set aside are bicycle and pedestrian trails. But this just to let you know that there are some other project types that you can submit for. Now, available funding, the reason I have this highlighted here in yellow is that these are estimated funds, and it's based on the previous round, the allocation that was available. We aren't going to know what that total number is, and hopefully we're going to know soon, but for now, we allocated funding based on the numbers here. So the MPOs across, statewide, they have $6.1 million to allocate. Each CTB district member, they have $1 million for each year for fiscal year 23 and 24. CTB at-large members and the secretary, you see the number here for $5 million statewide, And then for the HRTPO funding per year is 1.8, and that's what we're working with right now. So wanted to mention that the additional funding from the Federal Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act will be available for fiscal years 22 through 26. I spoke to VDOT, and we should have these marks available soon, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, so that we can try to get at least the fiscal year 22, 23, and 24 funds allocated. So from the last round, the total allocations that we had available was $5.7 million. So just a little bit of information on how the process goes. So VDOT's Local Assistance Division, they work with the applications, they score the applications for the proposed projects. And then HRTPO staff coordinates with our CTB member, Mr. Stant. We sat down late January and he made his selections for the TA set-aside projects and allocations. And then this month, the HRTPO board will approve a set of projects to be considered by the CTB in June. I know this is kind of small, but let me see if I can load this up just a little bit. Is that big enough to work with? All right. Okay, then this whole process is flawed. All right. So the TPS Transportation Program Subcommittee sat down in February 18th to provide recommendations to the TTAC today on projects, there are new projects you'll see listed there, but also existing projects. We had three projects that did not receive full funding for the last round. One of them was able to get complete funding from a CTB member. Virginia Beach, I think, had about $8,300 left on a project and needed funding. They utilized some local funds to complete funding on that. And then the city of Hampton still had an outstanding need of $414,849. Now, what the plan to do here is, with the IIJA funds, Hampton has requested the remainder of that $414,849 as soon as those funds are available. And so part of the recommendation today will be for the allocation of those funds, depending upon when that is available. One of the other things to highlight here is the Safe Routes to School. You'll see that the two lines here for Safe Routes to School, these were not capital projects. These were for administrative positions. And just a note here to let you know that those projects had a maximum score of 150 instead of the 300. But they're listed here based on the total score in order from top to bottom. And the allocations you can see here from our CTB member are starting at the top here. We have under item number 3, the Chesapeake Trail Phase 2 project, and also the Newport News Birthplace of America. And under number 7, another segment of the Birthplace of America Trail Newport News. And then also in Chesapeake, Trail Phase 3, and then a Grafton Sidewalk in York County. Those were the allocations and project selections from our CTB member, and he was trying to spread the money around best he could. And then with TPS, we had a nice long meeting, as you recall. And we worked through the rest of these, and so the idea is to fully fund any projects that are partially funded first. So that was the first step, and then kind of went down through the list, and for the most part in projects that had higher scores. So the suggestion from the TPS committee was to fund project number 2 in Newport News. Number 4 completed the funding on that in Newport News, fully funded the Bates Drive multi-use path, and then completed funding on the Newport News project under number 7, and also the York County Grafton Drive sidewalk. And that left us with just about $500,000 that we had left to allocate. And VDOT guidelines for TA set aside, or if you have a project that's a cost estimate of $200,000 or more, you need to have at least half funding, 50% funding on that. So with the IIJA, we anticipate that there will be enough funding to at least fund that partially, and I would imagine that Suffolk will request the full amount to have that funding fully, so that we have a clean slate going into the next round of the TA set aside. And if you have any questions on this right now, I'd be happy to answer them. It's a little bit much to unpack here, but we did manage to allocate all of the funds that we anticipate are available. So. This clicker isn't listening to me. So I wanted to highlight where we are right now. So the applications were due October 1st of 2021. Okay. Then the HRTPO board endorsed the projects that were submitted back in October as well. Sat down with the CTD member in January to get his allocations and project selections. And then the TPS on February 18th. And here we are today. We're looking for a recommendation of the projects and allocations to send to the HRTPO board later this month. And then in June, CTB will award projects. Some guidance here, some resources for more information. You can visit these sites if you haven't already, and to get some more information and to take a look at the portal for TA set aside. And I suggest taking a look at the local assistance website as well. So today's recommendation is to recommend HRTPO board approval of the TA set aside projects and funding allocations as listed in slide 7. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And here's my info if you want to email me as well.
Thank you, John. The allocation process is long, and some of those meetings are very drawn out.
It's a little bit.
But did anyone have any questions? I believe the table was also in everybody's agenda package.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so thank you. So did the CTO member, did he have any criteria that he went by in terms of his selection? Or what did he use?
His comment was he was trying to spread the allocations around a little bit. So he didn't go from the top scoring project to the bottom. He didn't go in order. So that was the criteria that he spoke of. Yeah.
So were there any new criteria that was introduced by VDOT in terms of the scoring?
Well, it was an updated process this go around. And, local assistance division with VDOT, they accept the applications and they do the scoring. So we receive the scores and then we do the allocation. And I do believe there were some new things. I don't know if anyone from VDOT wants to speak to that or not.
Yes, Madam Chair, there were some deductive scores that were included in this round of TAP applications. Basically, there was, I think, 3 different criteria. One was if the TA applicant had any projects that were deallocated or repayment requested within the last 5 years due to lack of adequate project development and or violation of federal rules and regulations. Another deductive item was, does the applicant have a TA project that is beyond 4 years of its first allocation that has not gone to construction? And the last was based on the dashboard, the VDOT's dashboard for on time and on budget, looking at fiscal years 22 through 25. So VDOT did use those criteria to apply deductive score to the total score of the projects this round.
Were those new criteria, were those provided to localities prior to the application or through the application guidance process? Or how did those new criteria enter in, or who made that decision to use those as your scoring criteria?
They were not provided prior to the applicant process. They were actually incorporated during the process of validation. As far as we know, that they were included in some of the presentations that were given, I guess recently. But I do acknowledge that VDOT, we could have done a better job at getting the word out to different localities and having a conversation prior to it being implemented.
There was a rather lengthy discussion regarding this particular aspect of the applications of the TPS meeting as well. One of the questions is, should we expect these deductive criteria to continue being applied to other applications moving forward? And would, at this point, now that they're being used, VDOT be interested in actually presenting them in a more direct and organized manner, possibly to the TTAC committee?
Madam Chair, we're not hearing that these are going to be applied to other funding programs, but I know there is an emphasis on looking at performance and how we're delivering. When I say we, VDOT and localities, how we're delivering projects on the development and delivery side. So I know that is an emphasis, but we have not heard whether this will be applied to other funding programs. To your second comment about having more discussion, yes, we have reached out to central office and asked that they join at our next TPS meeting to have a discussion on how the scoring criteria were established. And we could also expand that to the TTAC as well, if that's the desire.
Were there any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, please note, the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail, you show segment 2B is actually 3B, correct?
Okay, so on the Suffolk Seaboard Trail, 2B should be changed to
3B.
3B segment.
We'll make that change.
So if we move to approve the table as presented, we do need to include that modification in.
Sure. And I do one more comment, Madam Chair. The TPS meeting, we will more than likely have a special TPS meeting. In the agenda, it's listed as tentatively for, I believe is the 18th of March. That could also be the 25th of March too. As a matter of fact, it's looking more and more likely. Until we receive those marks, we're not going to be able to meet. Thanks.
I'm sure I just had a question on, when is the deadline for the next one?
October 1st, 2023 for the application segment.
And if I could just ask everybody, I'm not hearing anybody from back here, so if everybody could speak up, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
And let's make sure that we're pushing the button that looks all red. When you're speaking in the microphone. Did anyone else have any questions or comments, or was someone ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move the approval as modified for the Suffolk project, noting 3B versus 2B, but otherwise as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion specifically on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the level of traffic stress analysis final report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Last one, Steve Lambert and Sarah Kate were here talking about the level of traffic stress analysis and their test case with the city of Hampton. So the report was out for public comment from February 2nd through 16th. We did not receive any comments, so we are asking TTAC today to recommend HRTPO board approval of this final report.
Were there any follow-up questions from the presentation? If there's no questions, we have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10 is the TPO active transportation update. We're going to have a presentation from staff to go over this.
Madam Chair, thank you, Chairman. While Rob and Steve make the way to the podium, we thought it'd be good for an update on what's happening in the world of active transportation. I know TA set aside was the topic just before, but we thought it'd be good to bring all the ongoing work programs, what we're thinking, what has been done, just to talk about active transportation and hopefully share what some of the great work that we've been doing with all the localities. So I'm going to let them take on the presentation.
Okay, good. Let's take my mask off. Good morning. Steve and I are going to talk about active transportation, mostly Steve, but I'm going to start if I can figure out how to do that. Turn this thing on. Okay, thank you. Well, as y'all, some of you old folks like me have been around, you know we've been doing this for a long time. Of course, active transportation is all human powered, like walking and biking. But we've been, I showed a report there from 1976. No, that was even before my time. But, and then 94 was one of the first ones that I did here. We've been working to, plan, evaluate, and incorporate active transportation into our processes for years, and with a stronger emphasis recently with the hiring of Steve. So integrating it into our multimodal system. And so today we're going to talk to you about our recent work, our ongoing efforts, and our 2023 efforts, and then some AT projects for funding. Okay. Anyway, thank you. These are some of the recent special studies that we've done. And what we try to do is answer specific questions and set the stage for the active transportation plan, which Steve published a year or two ago. She'll talk to you about. So we had some economic impact studies, specifically the impact of the Virginia Capitol Trail in our area. We did a survey, of the spending, and I think estimated like $3 million a year spent. People from out of town spend due to that trail. And then we've got the status and birthplace of America Trail, the historical markers, and then last but not least, this impact of trails and sidewalks on home base. So I think that might be my last one, and turn it over to Steve. Yeah, here we go.
Thank you, Rob. All right, as Rob stated, some of these recent active transportation work done over the past few years, a lot of them were related to the Birthplace Mega Trail and the Virginia Capitol Trail. Birthplace Mega Trail study was adopted in 2017. We worked with regional stakeholders to identify the potential routes from the Virginia Capitol Trail to Fort Monroe and Hampton, and the Southampton Roads Trail in Suffolk. And we formed a subcommittee for that study, and that subcommittee was developed during the planning process of the study. It was then used as a starting point for our active transportation subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of you guys. Following the Birthplace Mega Trail, there we go. Following the Birthplace Mega Trail, we were tasked with developing our first HRTPO regional active transportation plan, linking Hampton Roads, which, as Rob said, it was adopted in 2020, 2 years ago in March. Following that study, using the proposed active transportation network that was developed in the Lincoln Hampton Roads plan, HRTPO used that data. There we go. Use that data to assist in the development of the active transportation portion of the 2045 LRTP. The 2045 version of our long-range transportation plan was also the first that we actually had active transportation projects scored equally out of 300 with the other modes. And also, just on top of that, I'd like to note that one of the top scoring projects for our region was the Birthplace America Trail. So, good work on us. So, following that, over the last 2 years, in the fall of 2020, the Peninsula CAOs requested assistance from us to advance the Birthplace America Trail project from planning to construction. As part of this initiative from the Peninsula CAOs, Bob Crum, our executive director, and the CAOs have also requested to co-title this trail as the Virginia Capital Trail Extension to capitalize on the success of the Virginia Capital Trail. HRTPO staff has been assisting the Peninsula CAOs since this time with routing, planning, and collaboration between the localities and key stakeholders on the peninsula. Following the work with the Peninsula Initiative, the CAOs requested assistance again this last year from HRTPO staff. John Mahaley led our side to request funding via the 2021 RAISE grant application process. We narrowed the application down to 3 projects in Williamsburg, Newport News, and Hampton, as you can see on the map on the left, for a request of about $16 million. Sadly, neither our project nor any construction project in Virginia was funded during that cycle. Following that, we were currently working with VDOT with an on-call consultant, Michael Baker. Over there. All right, there we go. We apologize for the technical issues today. But anyway, so currently we're working with Michael Baker and VDOT to assist localities on the peninsula with planning and designing of key segments of the trail for funding opportunities. We're working with them to refine the cost estimates for these key segments. And also we're helping to develop better route alternatives in certain select areas. We had a kickoff meeting last fall. And recently, about a month ago, we just met with all the localities and sat down with them on the peninsula and worked through some of the key issues. Sorry, Keith. I didn't know you were
Let me take
over
it.
there. I
Let me take it.
apologize. Anyway, so as you guys know, the level of traffic stress analysis for the city of Hampton was just approved by you guys. So I won't go into too much detail about it, but it'll be on the board agenda for this March. And then following that, as part of our 2022 work program, we just started working on our Hampton Roads Regional Trails Report. This report aims to promote our regional, statewide, and national trails in our region. It will also highlight existing segments of our trail across the region, and will also identify key gaps. The report will also include level of traffic stress analysis on key proposed trail segments. The anticipated completion of this report is in June of 2022 this year. Based on recommendations from our Lincoln Hampton Roads, our regional active transportation plan, to make schools safer for children to walk, John Mahaley and his team are currently working on a safe routes to school case study for the city of Hampton to map out the pedestrian infrastructure around schools. The draft study is scheduled to be presented at the May TTAC meeting. And if you have any questions, you can contact John and his team in Bashore. And we'll also be starting our active transportation, quote unquote, toolbox. The idea behind this toolbox is to be the one-stop shop for information, including sharing local and regional best practices. We want to be able to highlight our regional active transportation destinations and existing trail segments, and also include resources for funding. So you can go to our website and find all the information that John talks about all the time. And we anticipate starting this in June of this year. And going forward, the planning efforts for the 2023 fiscal year include a follow-up to the regional trails report with marketing and online materials, another level of traffic stress analysis, or level comfort study or sidewalk equity analysis for a locality and or regional trail. And we will also be working with the city of Norfolk to provide analysis for the extension of the Elizabeth River Trail to the Virginia Beach city line. Also, as John kind of talked about earlier, staff wanted to make sure that we bring up that we do have multiple funding opportunities for active transportation projects, including the TA set aside that you just talked about, CMAQ improvement program, and the RSTP program. And we also have two other funding opportunities that are coming up here shortly, is the Smart Scale program and also another round for the RAISE grant program, which have deadlines coming up here pretty soon. A lot of you localities have already been harassing John and myself about some of the projects on the peninsula, so please make sure that you guys are working on those. Go ahead, Keith. And finally, if you have any questions or anything about the upcoming fiscal year projects, you can contact Rob directly. For questions about any of the active transportation related projects, you can contact myself. And for any active transportation funding or safe route to school questions, please contact John or Bashoy. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments? I don't see that we're looking for action on the information at this point, so if there were no questions or comments, we'll go ahead and move to item 11, which is a presentation on the funding of upgrading private roads to VDOT system.
Okay, we're working on that. While he's getting that ready, I just want to say this private roads initiative came from, the request came from the County of Gloucester. And for this, they wanted, help with how to fund these roads, how to deal with it. We'll get into all that. And I think the other counties can benefit from this too. But then in studying this, we contacted dozens of counties all across the state, which you'll see. And of course, we contacted VDOT, some different experts there, including Tommy Catlett and Franklin Residency. So let's get started. We're going to talk about, purpose, and need, and sources, and that kind of thing. So let's get into it. First, the purpose. The citizens often contact counties like Gloucester. They want to turn the maintenance of their roads over. They're tired of maintaining their private roads. Turns out, of course, that is to VDOT, because in Virginia, that's who owns and maintains the roads in the counties. And so it's what's called a rural addition to the VDOT system. There are often two types of requests. One's for private streets, often paved, that were subdivisions platted in the 60s and 70s, and then there are also private lanes, often unpaved, that serve a few homeowners. So that's why we put it into the UPWP. Okay. Here's a map showing all the counties that I contacted. And by contacted, I mean not only did I reach out to them, but we actually had a discussion by email usually, or phone, actually more frequently. But so we contacted them, see how they handle it. We contacted, of course, like I said, VDOT staff, VDOT documents, their webpage, and then Virginia code. Okay. So first, the need for funding. Why do you need funding? Well, you can't just, VDOT won't just take a road. It has to meet their standards. And so you got to get the right, you got to dedicate the right of way, of course, but also you have to have the right pavement width and thickness and drainage, including easements. And this can be, fairly expensive. Here's some recent examples in the $100,000 to $300,000 range from different counties. Okay? So let's talk about where that money might come from. Of course, being private roads, the last one there's the landowner that we're going to talk about, but also there are some state and county funds. So first, with the state funds, there are no longer any rural addition funds, but there are telecommunication fees, which a portion of which can be used by the counties for rural additions. But this is not a lot of money. For example, in Gloucester, it's about $6,000 a year. So you can see if you had even $100,000 project, it would take years to fund that kind of thing. But there are, of course, as y'all are familiar with revenue sharing funds, you got to come up with the 50% match. And there are different ways that we'll talk about how to do that. But some use a special tax district of the landowners to come up with that 50% match. But as it says at the bottom, several counties just have a policy of not using state funds to upgrade private roads. Okay. So what about county general funds? Well, again, that's even rarer, as you might imagine. Those funds are tight, but there are a few that have used their general funds. They're listed there. I think these were mostly one-time type deals, not a routine kind of thing. But, and again, many counties have a policy of not using county funds. Okay, so that leaves you with landowner funds. Sometimes if it's small enough or they're got the money that can be direct payments or special assessments, like I mentioned. These counties have done that to, get the money from the landowners. And then there are even sanitary districts, Warren County. I'm still working on ironing out the details with Warren County on this. But they have used apparently as half of that 50% match. They've gotten the money through the sanitary districts. Okay. So what about just in general how you process these requests? We tried to address that in the document. So the second half of the document is all about addressing those requests. And we found some things that are helpful. First, addressing the difficulties. Then, two, there's some non-monetary aid. Since the money is short, you do some non-monetary aid. And then how to prioritize the use of public funds if you are going to do that. So let's get into first addressing the difficulties. You can avoid unsuccessful conversions because most of the conversion attempts are unsuccessful. You can try to respond and avoid that by addressing up front with the requesting citizens these three difficulties: the dedication of right-of-way, the private funding is often required, and the frequency of success. Let them know, what's the reality here. And so I like this at the bottom there. Franklin County requires an application fee, and that money can be used, towards the construction, but and it can even be refunded. But they want to know up front, do y'all have any money, or are you just talking? So I like that. Let's go. So the dedication, again, try to get that straight up front. York County at the bottom, they asked the property owners to communicate their interest in writing within 30 days because surprisingly, some of the citizens balk at turning over the right of way. So that needs to be straightened up in the beginning. Okay. Then the funding, counties try to get the cost of the upgrades, even a rough estimate from VDOT, which is nice. VDOT often provides that, and be honest with them about the amount of money that's available from the state and local, and then what the private funds would be required. And often the citizens often walk away at that point. Okay. Then here's the frequency of success. The 38 counties in that rouge colored, yes, have seen no successes in recent years. And then I found 13 that had some successes, including some in our area. But you can see they're more lack of successes than successes. Okay. But you can provide some non-monetary aid. Some counties provide technical assistance, deed preparation, on-site meetings, which is good with the landowners and VDOT. The three of them get out there and say, okay, what's the deal here? And so some counties, staff direct the request to their board of supervisor member. You all will be more familiar with that than me. Okay. And then some counties, including New York, they prioritize the usage of funds by some technique. New York, as you can see on the right there, they calculate the landowners per mile, and then the lowest number gets at the top. So that's where I assume they think those would be more successful, less cost per landowner, that kind of thing. So other counties have different techniques. Okay. And then finally, I think we were asked to look at any legislative initiatives. We didn't really see much, but we did hear that VDM was interested in a relief fund for private roads damaged by storms. It's a little bit different issue, but helps the private roads. And then the idea has been floated to use a different set of standards, what's called the Rural Rustic Road Program, which I won't go into much detail there, but it's just a lower standard that would be used for bringing these roads into the system. So this slide just summarizes what I've talked to you about today, the options that are available, the funding that's available. And then let's look at the last slide, which is just, if you have any questions, and you can either ask them today, of course, or we've got a 2-week comment period on the document, and you can contact me. And so that's what I've got.
Thank you, Rob. I know for Alabama and the other rural counties, this has actually been very helpful. It's a problem that we deal with on a regular and recurring basis every year, especially when we go through the secondary 6-year plan. Did anyone have any questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I want to just thank Rob and the HRTPO staff for pulling this report together. It's very helpful for us. We have had a rural additions program around for a while, and citizens call and we add them to a list. And we say maybe there will be money one day, but currently there is not. As we allocate $6,000 a year because we know it's not anything. We're doing road improvements. And so this is going to, in this report, I want to also thank all the localities that helped to respond and put this together. Now we know what they do, and we're going to work with our transportation advisory committee to come up with a policy how Gloucester is going to handle it, so people aren't left in limbo. It's clear ways to fund it. They have a stake in the game because it is needed. It is not funded. So I just want to thank you again. And yes, I agree. It'd be very helpful for the local houses. Over half of our lane miles are private. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think I have a question for Rob. Rob, I noticed your data looked like it covered the core area of the state. Did you look at Accomack and Northampton County for attempting to bring roads like this into the system?
Yes, I reached out to almost every county in the state, including those two, I believe, and just some we just weren't able to connect or didn't get a response. But it turned out to be a pretty good representation.
Okay, because I know the ANPDC has tackled submissions like this for the two counties, so I can give you contact information, because I believe they applied for some type of block grant to help them bring the roads up to a standard
All right.
that they could be accepted into the system. So I'll give you a
That'd be
contact.
interesting, if you can get that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do also have a list called the list. That sits on the shelf, and people just reference it as the list. Am I on the list? I think I'm on the list. I want to be on the list. Were there any other questions or comments on the report? It'll be out for public comment now, I believe.
Yes.
And then the
Should
final
be
will be
today.
presented next month.
We last for.
Okay, so that finishes up item 11. Item 12 is the 3-month tentative schedule. It is in everybody's agenda package, and it looks like the next 3 months already have a pretty full agenda, so hopefully we won't have any issues getting a quorum. We have a lot of things to do. Item 13 is for your information. I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to the reports that are in here specifically.
Voting is mainly the working group minutes from Dollars Hill, and then we got all this business, the monthly HRTPO TTAC development report, and that's included just for reference.
Right, 14 is any other announcements. I haven't received any specifically, but did anyone have anything that they wanted to add?
Madam Chair, just a reminder that following this meeting, we will have a traffic meeting with the AMD logo.
Actually, we're gonna meet over there in the 757, like we've been doing. There was some confusion there, I'm sorry, but we'll be meeting over there in the smaller.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I did have one other announcement. This is from the previous meeting. I did set today, close business today as a deadline if any locality or agency plan to submit a raise grant and asking for a letter of support for that. So I have 2 and possibly 3 in the works right now. Just wanted to see if anybody intends to send that in today, or if they might need another day or so. If you have that information, please contact me.
This is Keisha Branch, and I'll double check with Rayo Russo, because I do believe we intend to submit a raise grant. I'm not sure if they were intending to make that request, but I'll definitely follow up with them.
Okay, and if you need a template for the request, I can forward that to you as well.
May you, please?
I'll
Thank
do
you.
that.
Hey, John.
Mhm.
The FTAC during their meeting tomorrow is going to consider a request to support a port infrastructure development program grant that the port will be applying for. It is due by May 16th, and I know that we've looked ahead at the TPO's meeting schedule, and so we'll be coordinating to get that onto the agenda. It's not a raise grant, but it is something that we would like to work with the TPO.
Okay, all right.
Okay, were there any other announcements? Any old or new business that needs to come up? I'm not seeing anything, so with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.